Yeah, an outstanding evening. We have had outstanding speakers over the years, and tonight is no exception. Christopher Ruddy, who founded Newsmax in 1998, serves as its CEO. But you know, he really is another American success story. I mean, only in America can you rise to the top and have a vision and do things that are important. Newsmax today is one of the nation's leading broadcasting and digital media companies. The company includes the Newsmax network, the fourth highest rated cable news channel in the United States, according to Nielsen, by the way. A Reuters Institute study found Newsmax was one of the top 12 U.S. news brands, and Ruddy began his career as a journalist. He was with the New York Post and Pittsburgh Tribune Review, so he has a definite connection to our Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Multi-Channel News named him to its News Titans list of top 10 people to know in television news. Newsweek ranked him one of America's top 20 most influential news media personalities. Please welcome a true American success story, Christopher Ruddy.
They were putting the microphone, multiple microphones here.
Oh, I guess I should have been the one to mention that John Gizzi is coming up and we'll have these comfortable chairs for a great conversation.
Who is John Gizzi again?
Who is John Gizzi? Yeah.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I am so inspired by the crowd today, and it's an amazing group. Mr. Henry and Dave, what you put together, it's been an amazing group. John, actually, I don't do a lot of speeches. John called me and he said, they'd like you, this is about a year ago, they really want you to be the speaker at the annual Pencil. My friend Loman's hosting it, and you've got to come. And I love Pennsylvania. Even though I was originally from New York, I'm now a Florida resident. Been there since 1998, love it. I love Pennsylvania because my career, it started in New York in journalism, but I ended up at the Pittsburgh Tribune Review, working for my late friend, Richard Mellon Scaife. We became very good friends, and he was one of the original investors in Newsmax to help me start. So I always felt that we were part of the Pittsburgh legacy of Dick Scaife, who is an amazing man. Some of the folks here, certainly the Hannas, know him very well, and many people here. Dick was an incredibly visionary who believed in the conservative movement. Now there's a lot of billionaires that donate to conservative causes. Back in the 90s and the 80s, there was no one except for Dick. Maybe a few people. The Coors poked their nose out to do a little thing, and everybody went after them. Dick was fearless, and he funded the Heritage Foundation, Free Congress with Paul Weyrich, the Hoover Institution. Many of these groups started with Dick Scaife's initial donations. Certainly, Newsmax credits him as one of our founding fathers, so I'm very proud to be here. And then one of my great mentors in politics was Faith Whittlesey. Some of you may remember her. She was a force of nature. She was Reagan's political director, ambassador to Switzerland. She had been county executive in Delaware County. Reagan fell in love with her, not so much because she was very good looking. She was. Nancy was a little concerned about that, I was told. That's why she was shipped off to Switzerland a couple of times. True story. They said that when Faith came into the room, Reagan would stop and he'd listen to everything he says. It sounds like Donald Trump, right? Anytime a woman comes in, Trump, suddenly it was very quiet, listens to everything being said. But Faith told me the story, what happened in the 1980 campaign. Bush had won in Iowa. Reagan was on the ropes after Iowa. He came back in New Hampshire, but it wasn't really clear. They go soon thereafter into Pennsylvania, and Drew Lewis and Faith Whittlesey put together this secret plan where the state primary was a beauty contest, but the delegates actually determined who was going to win the primary. And they won 70% of the delegates in that election. Dave, I think you probably remember some of that. And Reagan couldn't believe that Faith had organized this whole thing so that he won the primary, even though Bush, they announced, was the winner of the general election on the primary. So it's sort of clever, and sometimes in politics things don't really, they oftentimes don't look like they appear. I'd like to talk to you tonight about some serious matters on something that sits at the center of our country's future, something bigger than politics and bigger than any one election. I want to talk about the dangerous concentration of power going on in this country and why it threatens the very freedoms that we all love and cherish. Because if there's one thing that defines the American system, it's this: we don't trust concentrated power. We never have. Our founding fathers fought a revolution, and they did so not to replace one king with another. They built a system to divide power, limit power, and hold it accountable through checks and balances, through competition, and the rule of law that protects us all. They understood something very fundamental. When power concentrates, freedom disappears. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Today, we are facing a new kind of concentrated power. Our founders could never have imagined what is happening today. A handful of massive corporations, big tech giants like Google, Meta, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, have gained a massive concentration of power. They now control how we communicate, what we see, what we buy, and even what we're allowed to say. Think about that. Google controls search, what information you find. They control your email with Gmail. They control what you see on video with YouTube. They control most of the ads you see across the internet. Facebook and Instagram control what news spreads and what gets buried. Amazon controls online commerce and even competes with the very own companies that are its sellers. Apple, of course, controls distribution. These companies are so massive, if you took their market capitalizations, you can look it up on any Yahoo Finance or your stock pages, it would equal about $17 trillion, the combined market capitalization of those companies. Compared to global GDPs of countries, they would rank these 5 companies combined just behind the United States and China. US is number 1 at about 30+ trillion. China's at 18. These 5 companies would be 17 trillion. They would act as if they are the 3rd largest country. Sometimes they act as if they are the largest country. They have not just achieved business success, we all love that, we admire it, but they hold concentrated power, or as they say at Harvard, system-level dominance, at every level almost. This didn't happen by accident. So let's go back into the 1990s when the internet was formed. Part of this power exists because the laws that were never meant for these companies are being used by them to protect their status and power. Section 230, for instance, was passed in 1996 to protect small emerging internet companies so they weren't sued into oblivion. But today, trillion-dollar corporations like Google have this unique privilege. They can publish, promote, profit, and even censor from content they don't like. But then they claim they're not responsible for anything they do. No newspaper gets this protection, no TV network, no small business, only big tech. So they act like publishers when it benefits them, and like neutral platforms when it serves their purposes. That's not a free market. That's a system that's rigged. It's rigged, as our president would say. Now, here's where it gets more serious. After the 2020 election, we saw something that should concern every American, regardless of party. A sitting president, Donald Trump, was removed from most major platforms, Facebook, Twitter. Conservative voices were also censored or throttled. Outlets like Newsmax were directly impacted, so I have some skin in the game here. And later, we learned something even more troubling. very disturbing. There was a coordination between government agencies and these big tech companies to monitor and suppress these diverse viewpoints in conservative media. We know from documents that Elon Musk released when he bought Twitter that the FBI and Homeland Security would sit on sites like Newsmax and other conservative sites, telling them what to allow the algorithm to promote or to absolutely just cut off. Newsmax was one of these targets. We also know the State Department had set up an office called the Global Engagement Center. They always have these benign names to everything they do. And the purpose was supposedly to get federal funding, right, to counter foreign propaganda. Okay, sounds good. We now know that the GEC, as it was called, was not monitoring foreign governments. They were monitoring sites like Newsmax, and they were working with left-wing monitoring groups like NewsGuard and the GDI, the Global Disinformation Index, which is backed by George Soros out of London. These groups monitor us, and they were targeting not only Newsmax, but groups like Daily Wire and The Federalist. Just last week, the State Department settled a lawsuit. You didn't see this in your local newspaper here in Harrisburg, I can assure you, but it's true. They settled a lawsuit filed by Daily Wire and Federalist. Marco Rubio closed down the GAEC. He said no more. Marco is doing a great job, by the way. You should know NewsGuard and GDI both have received grants at the same time they were engaging in all this rating system where they were always give all the conservative media low ratings. They in turn would use it either for government agencies, big tech, or advertising agencies to block us from getting advertising. If you don't have advertising, typically as a media organization, you die, right? So this was a very clever way they had figured out. They were getting funding from the federal government during the Biden years. So let's be clear, if the government directly censors speech, it's definitely unconstitutional. But if the government pressures private companies to do it for them, that is censorship by proxy. And it's just as dangerous. Jonathan Turley, who's also on Fox News, Georgetown law professor, has called this part of a massive censorship industry. We now know how dangerous this is. You have government power and corporate power working together without accountability. This is exactly what our system was designed to prevent. But it doesn't stop with speech. We also have seen the rise of what I call economic censorship, where I discuss the impact organizations like NewsGuard have had. NewsGuard was founded in 2018 by a guy named Stephen Brill. Stephen Brill has been a Democratic Party activist and donor for almost all his life. He first came on the national scene politically, defending Bill Clinton during the Lewinsky matter, came out as an advocate of Obamacare. He has years and years of supporting Democratic candidates, he and his wife. He's the arbiter to determine who is reliable and who is brand safe for ad agencies all across this country, for big tech companies and others. This is all about political labeling, and it's about control. And then the concentration of power isn't just political or business, it's also cultural. Today, young people are growing up in a world where algorithms, not parents, not communities, not you, shape their worldview. These platforms are designed to maximize engagement. What drives engagement? Outrage, controversy, extremes. We're seeing the consequences everywhere in this. Rising confusion about identity among young people. We see that so many kids don't even know their biological sex anymore, as if there is more than two biological sexes. A Gallup poll recently found that 20% of kids under 30 identify as LGBTQ+, whatever that means, and they don't know their identity. I'm a kid, I'm still a kid. I grew up in the 1970s, probably like many of you here. I don't remember anyone ever having a question or confusion whether they were male or female. Now it's a common occurrence. Where is this coming from? I believe you can trace it with the power and growth of social media, algorithms, and the pushing of both ideological and sexual agendas on the internet. They created systems designed to manipulate attention on a gigantic scale. When a few companies control the system, they can reshape society. And then we know there's media consolidation at work going on in the country, the concentration of power. We're seeing it all across traditional media and new media. Fewer companies control more outlets. We saw it in radio. Radio consolidation has been so massive. It used to be 30 years ago, there were hundreds and hundreds of radio companies across America. No one really dominated. Today, 3 companies control all the major radio licenses on markets across the United States. One of them, George Soros, owns. I wonder why. Radio is still very influential. And now we're seeing an effort for TV consolidation. And sadly, it's actually coming from the Trump administration, from the FCC, where the FCC has moved to allow for the biggest, most massive consolidation in TV ever allowed, ever happened. So bringing back a little history, in the 1980s, Reagan had this idea with the FCC. We don't want CBS and NBC owning all the little stations in America. So we'll let them, as networks, own stations that reach 25% of the United States. So ABC and CBS typically bought up stations in like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, the big markets, to get to that 25 number. And then over time, Congress increased the cap, it's called the TV ownership cap, to 39%, which it stands today, as according to a 2004 law. That has served the country very well. There is broad bipartisan support. Polling shows that 70-80% of the public supports these caps, for good reason. I don't believe that Donald Trump would have ever won 16, 20, or 24 had these caps not been in place. Because if you look at the stations that are owned by the big networks out of New York, they're in states that almost invariably are the bluest cities with the bluest states in the union. And I believe that they're linked to the local TV stations. Why are the local TV stations so important? You say, well, there's big tech now, we don't really. Well, actually, there is no local news anymore in the country except for the local TV. The demise of newspapers, the consolidation of radio's gutted local programming, there's nothing left really except for those local broadcast TV. And the Pew study, the Knight study, there's several studies all show 80+% of Americans get all of their local news or primarily from local TV. So now we're moving under the new FCC mandates, which I don't believe are MAGA or in good sense or conservative in any way, under the leadership of Brendan Carr, to allow a handful of stations, including Nexstar, which is seeking to merge with Tegna. We have opposed this merger. It is a dangerous merger and will give Tegna not 39% allowed under law, but 80% reach in stations across the country, 80% of homes. Never happened before. Nexstar will own 260 TV stations across 44 states. They will own more TV stations than ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox owns combined. They are going to have such massive power, and they're going to make a lot of money. They made $1.8 billion last year, and they're presuming with the new merger, they're going to go up to about $2.5 billion. So it's big bucks for them. But it's bad for us. Nexstar, of course, not surprisingly, is very liberal. They own News Nation, the cable channel that Chris Cuomo was the primetime host. 80% of their donations from their employees in the 24 election went to, guess who, Kamala Harris. I remember in the 1990s, the media leaned liberal, but maintained at least a pretense of being balanced. In the 24 election cycle, we have seen completely an effort to overthrow not only Donald Trump, but the existing political order by backing the Democrats at whatever cost. The Media Research Center found establishment media reports about Kamala Harris in that 24 election were 84% positive, while reports about Donald Trump were 89% negative. So if you tuned into NBC, ABC, 89% were negative. Does that sound like a free and competitive press to you? Yet voters still made their choice. But how different it wouldn't have been, I believe, a close election for Donald Trump in 24 if we had a more vibrant, competitive press. So here's the truth. I believe in capitalism. I believe in free markets, but real capitalism requires competition. Because without competition, capitalism doesn't stay free. It turns into a monopoly. And monopoly leads to stagnation, price increases. It's harmful. In the 1970s, they said we shouldn't break up AT&T. It would create disaster in the telephone company if Ma Bell didn't control. They had every home in America on their system. Well, they were broken up, and everybody that was for keeping AT&T together were wrong because it led to massive innovation, lowers prices. Remember when long-distance calls cost a fortune, you couldn't make them? Cell phones came out of this, the internet came out of this. Competition unleashed progress. That's the American model. Today, the stakes are even higher because we are in a global war with China. In December 2025, the respected Australian Strategic Policy Institute found that China now leads the world and the United States in roughly 90% of the 74 critical technologies leading our world economy. I'm talking about nuclear energy, AI, hypersonics, nanotechnology, drones. These are big things. I'm not a scientist. I think you realize 90% of them now are led by China, according to this institute. 20 years ago, the US led in 90%. We are in a titanic struggle. We are in trouble. It's time to hit the panic button. If this trend continues, China, not the United States, will dominate and shape this world and this century ahead. A number of factors have contributed to this, but I believe one of them is this stifled corporate competition that we're seeing where 10 big companies control Washington and everything that goes on, and all the inside deals are done, and even China has benefited from all of those things. When new entrants cannot break in because of these entrenched giants, dynamism fades, innovation fades, and freedom dies. Now, the left has its answer to all this: more regulation, more bureaucracy, more government control. I don't think that's the solution, because giving more power to government bureaucrats and elites doesn't solve the problem of concentrated power. It only makes it worse. The conservative answer is our answer, and it's different. Enforce antitrust laws, break up monopolistic behavior, level the playing field, let small business people be the engine for our American economy and our global economy. I'm not for punishing success. I'm here to protect opportunity. We need to stop this massive concentration of power. We need free and fair competition in media and big tech, in business. Because America works best when everyone with a good idea and who works hard can compete and win. At the end of the day, this comes down to a simple principle. No one should be above the law, not government, not big corporations, not billionaires, not bureaucrats. People must remain accountable, because that's what protects freedom, it protects speech, it protects opportunity, it protects all of us. Truly, I tell you, we are at a turning point in this nation. We can either accept a future where a small group of powerful people and institutions in government, in tech, in media control more and more of our lives, or we can push back. We can restore competition, we can defend freedom, we can defend free speech, we can demand accountability, and we can preserve what makes this country truly exceptional. Because America didn't become great through centralized control, 5-year plans, or massive corporations in bed with government. It became great through freedom, competition, and the rule of law. If we don't protect these things now, our future will be lost. If we protect those things, the future is ours. We have a choice. I want to thank everyone here because I know that you're standing for this country and for these principles. And as long as we do, there's great hope ahead. I want to thank you, and God bless you and the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.